Daptime, a time dedicated to applying principles that invigorate, motivate, and elevate. Daptime, a time where dope, adventurous people think individually to mutually empower. Full episodes can be found at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or on our website at www.itsdaptime.com. Also, follow us on Instagram at Daptime21, Twitter at Dap_time, Facebook at Daptime, and on YouTube at Daptime TV. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Thank you for your continued support. As always, we're proud to present our one of our key sponsors, Harrell Eyewear, the maker of great fashionable glasses for all occasions. Also, keep a lookout for Never Lose Your Identity, powered by Harrell Eyewear. Thank you. It's time.
Yo, welcome back to another episode of Daptime. I am AJ, also known as B-Dub, Bobby Westbrook, and as always here alongside my partner in crime, the one and only world-renowned Big Dame. And that groovy here is being provided by in-house maestro, always dropping the needle on the one. Nice. Three of us are delighted to welcome you back and really excited for this episode. We're going to kick off a series we've been looking forward to doing probably for about 3 or 4 months, just kind of getting ourselves prepared for it. Bold, authentic manhood. Bam! With the baby bam beat. We're going to talk about what it means to be boldly and authentically man these days. And I think you're going to enjoy the conversation. Some may be challenged. We're going to take our time with it. But with that, it is now time. Relax your spine, activate your mind. Let's get it. Big Dame, what's happening?
What's happening, bro? It's been a while, man. Been a while.
I know we've been over on Game Time. Yeah. For those of you who don't know, Big Dame and I are taking the sports conversation over to Game Time, where we do sports and sports related topics. And here we just deal with lifestyle. Mm-hmm. So check out for that. By the way, if you haven't done so, before we go any further, make sure you hit that subscription button and notification bell so you can stay up to date. You'll definitely want to stay up to date with everything we drop around this series. Big Dame, as we kick off this series, and this will be a different conversation. I know normally we do an extended intro and talk about some current events and things like that. Mm-hmm. But I thought to kick off this series, this conversation is really about laying the foundation, the framework, the inspiration for why we want to tackle this issue and the angle we're coming from to really kind of give us a baseline. Mm-hmm. So by way of recap for our listeners, sometime in early spring, just crossed my mind a passage of scripture that I had heard as a kid around church, through church circles, even in different messages that evangelists might preach here and there. But it popped in my mind, and the passage of scripture is from 1 Corinthians 13:11. In the New International Version, it reads, "When I was a child," and that's authored by the Apostle Paul, mm-hmm. famously. This is when I was a child, I thought like a child. I reasoned like a child. Mm. I talked like a child. But when I became a man, I put away the ways of childhood and put them behind me. And, when I thought about that day, I was like, man, as men today, a lot of times I think a lot of the issues that plague men in life, be it in marriage, in friendships, with their career pursuits, where we find our place in the world, how we propagate our values and views and create value. A lot of it is because we're still talking, reasoning, thinking as we did as children, right? Mm-hmm. When you're a child, you everything's emotional, right? I didn't get my way, it could be a meltdown. Something I want that I feel I don't have the ability to get. Mm-hmm. I don't have the tools, resources, freedom to know how to go and make happen for myself. So I just kind of get stuck and stay stuck, all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. And so when you and I talked about it, it was like, man, this may be, we did many Faces of Manhood last year. This may be the next step in that direction. So we came up with a theme. By the way, there will be a T-shirt available online in the Dap Shop. Be sure to get that. If you're repping bold, authentic manhood, you'll want to add that to your collection.
Get about 15 or 20 of them while you're at it.
Right.
You'll love them.
Share them with a friend.
Oh, yeah.
And definitely, please know that as we go through this series, Big Dame and I have decided we're going to take the training wheels off. We're going to spend as much time as we need to, because I think that the times dictate. You hear people like Kevin Samuels and others really pushing messages of manhood, masculinity. We want to really get a great idea and picture of what bold, authentic manhood is, its value in society, and how we reflect that against the backdrop of a world that really seems to, that over time, have marginalized manhood. So as we dig into this, Big Dame, I want to start with a question to you that I think, we could probably go back and forth on. What does it mean to be boldly and authentically man today?
I think basically what it means is to drive in your lane. You know what I mean? I think that's where the confusion lies. I think you have too many people that have opinions on things that they don't even claim to be. You have individuals who they talk about toxic masculinity but they don't claim to be a masculine person. So how do you have a opinion on that? You know what I mean? That's like me having an opinion on being, LGBTQ. I'm not that. No disrespect to any of them, but I'm not that. So I can't speak on your lifestyle or how you should conduct yourself or how your community, the inner workings of that community. I can't speak to that. Likewise, as men, I think in many cases, we've got too many people outside of the community of men, and I'm talking real men, that have opinions and, comments on the man community. You know what I mean? So I think it starts to become gray. It starts to become convoluted because now, you have people telling you how to be a man that aren't men. So, and I think I don't think that's right. So I think to be a bold, authentic man is to ride that lane. If you are a man, be one, and if someone else comes to tell you what it is to be a man and they're not a man, then you should be able to correct them. You know what I mean? Just like if you go to a community of women and I start telling them, no, if you want to be a real woman, you got to do it like this and that and this. And that. They will run you out of the room. You know what I mean? They're not having that, and rightfully so. I think
get your slippers and get your house coat,
right,
and get on in there and get some pots clanging.
Yeah, that's trouble. That is trouble. But I think all too often I think a lot of men have just kind of went quiet, not all, but kind of went quiet on the situation and just, I think it's gotten out of hand.
I think you touch on so many things that you're right. I mean, the conversation has been neutralized. And let's be fair, there are examples of, I think what happened is a part of society has focused on the failures of men, the darker side of masculinity, misused authority, misappropriated power and influence, misrepresentation of what masculinity is, and taken and built the case, circumstantial as it may be, against masculinity. So they come up with these catchphrases like toxic masculinity. And so anytime a man asserts himself, whoa, you're being toxic,
right.
You're being toxic. When in reality, we're designed to be who we are, right? Just like some women, if a woman is happy being a homemaker, she really wants, her passion is the care for her home. Her work, which is work, is ensuring that the health, the wellness, the strength, the security inside of her home, for her children to grow, for her spouse to be at their best in and out of the house. Well, she gets marginalized, or you put too much on that in some cases.
Right.
And so I think, to your point, like, you have too many talking heads who don't really care about manhood, who aren't in fact interested in being boldly he and him. You know, they're he, him, they,
right.
You know, and everything else, which I know we'll get into as we go along in the series. You know, it's important. Let me ask you this. Why do you think it is important? And maybe that's an inherent question, kind of begged already, but why do you think it's important that we really dissect this issue? To you, why is it important to you that we do it right now?
Well, I think for one, we have to clear out the mess, so to speak, and we have to get back to the basics, right? Fundamentally, what is a man? What is your job? What should you be doing? And the reason that's important is because there's another generation coming behind us and coming behind them. That where are they taking their cues from? You know, how are they learning how to conduct themselves? How are they learning how to be men to these, you know, good men to these women as they, you know, grow into adulthood? And even more so, how are they learning how to conduct themselves in society and become, you know, functioning men in society? So without that clear delineation being drawn, I mean, you have a generation of young men who may or may not know how to properly conduct themselves. So I think that's why it's important, mostly.
I like that. I think that's a good objective. Is you know, and if you're tuning in, you haven't tuned into our show before, somebody shared this with you. Be sure to take a second to hit the subscription and notification bell. If you're catching us on YouTube, if you're on iTunes or Spotify, be sure to subscribe, because as we drop this, we want to make sure that the conversation keeps flowing, and we want to hear from you. Mm-hmm. So make sure your comments are noted. I think you make a great point, Big Dan, because, you know, maybe objective one here is to create a very clear identity, a model, a blueprint that the generation behind us can follow, because I do think that line has been blurred. I think one of the things that has happened, because we've built this, we're trying to redefine manhood around failures, is you've got so much concentration on what was wrong that you have people not focusing on what was right, what is good, what is healthy, what is productive, and a man being boldly and authentically male. And I think quietly, we've almost predisposed men toward failure in those very same areas because we highlight it, right? We don't deal with the issue. And you know, listen, regardless of what your beliefs and ideology, truth is truth. It stands on its own. It doesn't need a defense attorney to justify it. It is true. And as we grow in life, I think the thing about that passage in Paul is the idea that when you're a child, you know, take, for example, reasoning, you want to do something, and a child, you find, hey, because my parents, you know, I wanted, you know, to buy some Guess jeans. I don't have the money and I don't have a job. Mm-hmm. So I'm relying on parents, gifts, whatever, to get it, or I've got to go get a job to do it. Now, my parents say, hey, you know, if the laws at the time say until I'm 15, I can't get a job, then I got to get a hustle of some kind. Can I cut grasses, whatever. But I got to figure that out. And depending on what my parental structure is, I may or may not have the luxury to go and do that, right? I may be relegated to figuring that out on my own. I may be limited, and that may create frustration in me that I don't know what to do with, right? But that's a child. When you're a man, hey, I want to be a homeowner, but I make $15 an hour. And I got 2 kids that I had at an earlier stage of life, and I'm not with 2 baby mamas from that. And I've got this frustration. I can't just sit at home and I can't just start drinking it away. I can't go get in another relationship to try to sex it away. You know what I mean? Whatever it is, I've got to come up with a plan. When I was a child, I reasoned like a child. I thought like a child, right? I acted like a child. But when I became a man, and I think there's a lot of that because we talked about men being failures, deadbeat dads, walking out on their kids, having a bunch of baby mamas. I mean, we've kind of popularized this stuff through music and film in ways that, no, we don't glamorize it or glorify it, but we also don't provide truth that you have the ability, because you're now a man, to solve more of your problems than society says you do just because of your station in life. And so this idea that this conversation perhaps lays down a blueprint for people who are on the path to replicating the failures of our past can avoid that. You don't have to just be what you were in the past by your failures. The other thing I think is really interesting, man, is Kevin Samuels is super popular these days. You love him or you hate him for some people. When I first heard about Kevin Samuels, interestingly enough, it was because a woman was asking me in that way that women will ask you, you know, what you think about this Kevin Samuels?
Oh, yeah.
You know, I'm like, I don't know who he is. He's this man that's, you know, disparaging women on social media. And I'm like, oh, disparaging women? And the clip I saw at the time, he was telling some woman about her weight, basically breaking her down because she thought she was a 10. And he was making it very clear that, baby, you lucky if a man rates you a 6, right? And gave her the reasons why. And the hard truth in that conversation.
Right.
But it took me to, let me check out some more of his stuff. And one of the things that I found myself appreciating in his conversation is he is standing up as a man with some manhood type stuff, right? This is the line. So if you look, you gonna loud talk here? No, that's not the conversation. I'm not loud talking you. So if that's what you do, boom, you're off my platform. Yeah. Right? I'm not gonna put up with that. I'm not saying whether he's right or wrong in the way that he executes everything that he does. But what I appreciated is that he's standing up in a principle. And that principle is, hey, listen, I am a man. You are not going to talk to me any old kind of way. You're not going to be disrespectful. You're not going to bring that trash from the streets and from your friends into something that you're trying to do to engage with me. So here's a boundary. And I think in this conversation, one of the second things that I'm excited about in having it is hopefully we help men build the courage to stand up in what they know inside is a true identity, right? I don't have to be out here taking half the garbage I'm taking. Right. And that's not about race. That's not about economic status. That's about you as a man. I love what you said, Big Dan, when we were preparing. You were like, hey, if you don't identify as man, we got this is the language of today, right? If you don't identify as he, him, and if your interest is not in being bold, in being a man, then this is not your conversation. Right. No disrespect, but this is not the conversation for you. So I love that we will probably extract some of that as well. Any other things you're hoping to gain as we go back and forth on this topic?
Yeah, like I said, I hope to get a clear, identity to what a man is. I hope that people can take that away, and then how to walk in that, I think, is important as well. Because once you identify, once you become a man, there's some things you put away, right? Just like you said in the scripture, once I became a man, I put away childish things. So what does that look like? We're not necessarily talking about material things. There's a mindset change. You know what I mean? There's a psychological change, an emotional change. So there's some ways of thought that get put away. You know what I mean? When you become a man, because, and a lot of us get this, we struggle with this, but, a lot of people throw around, I'm a man, I'm a real man. It's not really a glorious, thing. You know what I mean? If you really get into it, it's kind of like you kicked it off with the scripture, but I'll just use this as an example. If you really, whatever religion you are, if you've read the Bible, to the people that are listening, if you've looked at the life of Jesus, he's celebrated as the King of Kings, right? But if you look at his life on earth, it was far from glorious. I mean, he worked, he was humble. He basically sacrificed for everybody else, for the greater good of everybody else. To me, that's what a man is. When you come to the full fruition of manhood. That's what it's all about. I make sure the kids are good. I make sure the wife is good. I make sure the house is good. I make sure everything is good. Oh, I got to work overtime. I got to work. That's what I got to do. I got to figure it out another way. I got to figure it out another way. As opposed to, man, but I really want to go to the game. I can miss this one. I'm going to call out and, well, you got bills to pay, man. You got food to put in the refrigerator. You got a future to think about. You got college coming up, maybe, or whatever for your kid. So there's a lot of things that you have to process, and you have to process them differently once you become a man. So I think that's equally as important. And I'm sure we'll really dig into that as we move through,
Yeah, I think at this point, I want to definitely spotlight. It is a great segue and springboard as we go through the series for our listeners. One of the things we're going to do is each episode we want to highlight some real men, right, and their journey and aspects of their journey that speak to us. And I want to reinforce here, because one of the things we know is real men can sit and have conversation. Mm-hmm. Real men can sit and have conversation and have differences of opinion. And the importance of changing the way we talk as we become men is that we can have spirited debate over different things and then walk away with the ability to, I don't agree with you, but I recognize your manhood and keep it pushing. And so I think with understanding that people have different faith, ideologies, and belief systems, we are standing in our own here. But it doesn't mean that we can't have conversation about others. The person we're going to spotlight today, Big Dame, is none other than Bishop Donald Green from San Francisco. Bishop Green is being spotlighted because it is an example of everything I think bold, authentic manhood is. Bishop Green's story, which was recounted by a journalist in the San Francisco Examiner, I believe it was years ago, and a link to that story will be up on our website as well as in down below. So if people want to go and read that, they'll get it here on YouTube. It'll be down under the description. But in his story, he started out as a young man, married his wife at 18 from San Francisco, was heavy into drugs at the time. Crack wasn't an option, although from the story, if it was, he probably would have been on crack too. He tried pills, smoking, everything he could. And his wife became a Christian early in their marriage. And he was like, hey, that's good for you, but don't talk to me about that. And he recounts the story of going to a jazz club. He was heavy into jazz at the time. He checked out Sonny Rollins at one club. He checked out Miles Davis was playing at another club in the city at night. He was getting high at each one of these stops, trying, but he couldn't get high enough. Mm-hmm. And as much as he loved jazz, he couldn't feel what he was usually feeling. And he found himself in the late hours of the night, early morning, in a room his wife had designated as the prayer room of their house, and crying out to Jesus. Mm. He had heard enough. He had been exposed enough. He had been to church with her once or twice, I think, at that time. And so he felt like, okay, save me, because he felt that vacuum, that void that needed to be filled. In the process, not only did he become a Christian, but then learns, as he begins to learn more about Christ, to stand up in his manhood. Mm-hmm. Now, as he moves forward, and we're going to touch this in the very next episode, we're going to talk about the very first principle of bold, authentic manhood. You don't want to miss that. And it's the importance of having a faith-based foundation. Mm. And we'll talk about that. And trust me, regardless of your belief system and your ideology and where you place your faith, you're going to appreciate that conversation. But in Bishop Green's case, here's a guy who went in from that point, right? A druggie, trying everything, to 40-year ministry in San Francisco, responsible for thousands of people, changing their lives. I'm not saying he himself held their hands and walked each one of them over the threshold, mm-hmm. but thousands of people came there, not only became members of the church, but for many of them found their purpose and place in life. Mm. Thousands of men who become bold, authentic men for a ministry. The Singing Cross, which is one of the productions they put on annually, was famous throughout the Bay Area at Easter time. Seeing people get off drugs, homeless people being fed, families that were being displaced to find shelter. Just a remarkable life. And not only what he did in the community, but now he and his wife raised a daughter who is now a really productive citizen in society, married, has her own children. So you go from this path of destruction to a path of stability. They ran a couples conference for over 30 years that helped couples save their marriage.
Mm-hmm.
Not to mention, personally, I saw my own family blessed by that. Mom and pops got married, had their challenges, but it was after going to their couples conference and then being regular attendees that they found a path to stability that has now set them on a course for 40 plus years of marriage and growth. So, bold, authentic man, all the principles are here. So one of the reasons we want to spotlight Donald Green and men like him as we go through this series is we want to make a point of noting not every great man that we have to look to for direction is going to be on the silver screen or on the big screen, on the stage. Some of them may be right around us in our community, and we need to look for those examples. We need to be connected to those examples, because one of the key things about bold, authentic manhood is you can't get there on your own.
Mm.
You need other men around you to encourage you, because we all falter. I mean, I think I wouldn't even begin to say that he has lived a blemish-free life. I'm sure his wife, who's now passed, would have told you countless stories of where he may have fallen short a time or two, things she wanted him to do that he didn't get done and things like that, because we are still human. But when you look at the rainbow of his life, you will see every box checked around bold, authentic manhood, and that's standing for something, contributing to the world beyond yourself, and ultimately being a man of your word, living by principle. So, Bishop Don Green, we celebrate you today. Big Dame.
Yes, sir.
When we talked about some of the implications and challenges, one of the things we talked about here, and I just think it's great to get out of the way, early in this conversation, because it may be in the mind of people.
Mm-hmm.
Today in society, you got gay men who are bold and they want to be authentic men. They live their lives as men. When you look at the issue of sexuality around manhood, how important is it to you that we really address this head on in this conversation?
Gay men, I think.
Yeah, I mean, between the difference between heterosexual men, gay men in particular.
So
and you could even throw in gender fluid. I mean, how does all of that play a factor in this conversation?
So as far as gay men, I think part of being a man is accepting that everybody has their right to make their own decisions. So I have no problem. I don't have any problem with anybody, but I think gay men, if they're men and they just identify as homosexual, they're still men, right? So, if they want help or they want to be involved in a conversation about being bold and authentic, I think by all means they should avail themselves to that, right? I think when you get into the gender fluid and stuff like that, again, not my community, so I can't really speak intelligently on it. But from
not gender fluid, bro.
Not at all.
Not gender fluid.
Not at all.
Okay.
No,
I just wanted to clarify.
Yeah. I was a man.
Who am I talking to?
Yeah, born and raised a man. But no, what's interesting about that is, from my understanding, gender fluid is where someone may identify as something other than what they were born, or they may identify as neither. It's mine. I believe so. So in that case, this probably is not for you, because unless you are a man, and it's not to exclude anyone, but they have AA meetings all the time, all over the country, right? If you're not an alcoholic, you're not going to go to the meeting. It's just as simple as that. If you're not a man, why would you even want to be involved? There's not going to be any information that's going to enhance your lifestyle, because that's not the focus. So I think that's pretty much where I am with that. But as far as if you're gay, you're gay. That's your business. But if you're a man, you're still a man. And there's still some things that there's still a role for you to play in society. And so, yeah.
I'm really, not that I'm surprised that you would take that stance, but I'm one of the reasons it was important to me, for us to really be clear about that is I think there's been a lot of speculation and there's a lot of confusion around it. Now, listen, you have, I think ignorance is a killer. It is something that will lead to death or destruction quickly. And I think because people haven't really had the conversation, you have people even trying to, frankly, I think ignorance is part of the reason why we've had the lines get blurred, because people haven't wanted to take the time to really understand, right? How do I function and flow with people when I don't see the world as they see it?
Right.
So let me just stay in my lane, keep these lines, let's keep the fences up and not deal with that. But when you deal with the reality that the world now, sexual preference is sexual preference. And so you have men who are all man, but their sexual preference is different than mine. And so because of that, how do I flow with them, right? That's why you have a Carl Nassib, this being the first time an active player who was already in the league comes out after being in the league. You have players who played and then they come out later. You have Michael Sam, who came out before he got to the league. But you can probably count on one hand the number of people who have been associated with one of the big three professional leagues, MLB, NBA, and NFL, who've come out and said, "Hey, I am homosexual," and that even has to be a conversation with all the other stuff that we've accepted in the world is crazy to me. But I think as it relates to this conversation, helping men understand that what that choice does not take away from where they identify gender-wise, but it is also, and probably we'll put this out as the first challenge to men who want to be bold and authentic men who say, I don't need to have my pronouns out there. Well, that's the way the world has moved now. So if you are a bold and authentic man, if there's somewhere where you are online, or if you're asked in a conversation, hey, how do you identify? You should full-throated and with all the bass you can muster, I am he and him, period. Next question, right? Now, I get it. Some people are like, hey, man, I'm man and I show up as man. But because of the world we live in, just because you're walking around, huff, looking on the outside, your shell that is that way, doesn't necessarily mean you're man. It also doesn't mean just because you identify he and him that you're man because you're 25 plus years old, because we understand by what we said as the groundwork, you can still be thinking, acting, and reasoning like a child. And so part of the reason I think to even get that inclusion in there is, as we go through this series, if you tuned in to Daptime before, and if we're going to be transparent. So, I'm going to be 100% real with you. These principles that we stand up, some of them I've had to learn along the way. Some of them I'm still working on because that's what life is about. That's what manhood is about. You got so much responsibility. You are growing in different ways. But you don't want to be in a room with somebody who's not a man and weighing in on the conversation. And they telling you, I think you could address it this way, or I think you could address it that way. But they don't really care about manhood, right? You want to know that the ingredients go in the pot are for the dish you're making, right? The person in charge of the sugar needs to put sugar in there. The person in charge of the salt needs to put salt in. You don't want baking soda going in when you need to have a different ingredient. So I think it's great to get a baseline that, hey, listen, if you're heterosexual, but you identify as man and you are about manhood, this conversation is for you as well. Next question, Big Dan. How do you see pain and trauma that maybe boys experience? And I'm not talking about sexual trauma or things like that, or I'm not even talking about sexuality related, but how do you see childhood trauma, abuse, lack of structure, things like that, playing a factor as we get through this conversation to help or make it challenging for men to adopt some of the principles and ideas that we throw out.
It's interesting that you say that because childhood trauma, I have seen it follow men deep into their adulthood. You know what I mean? I mean, grandfathers are out here still acting out from childhood stuff.
Skinny jeans. And
oh man, cut it out.
Adidas
cut
jackets.
It out. You really need to knock it off. But not only that. I mean, more in the mind frame. You know what I mean? More in, if you're out here, it's just certain things. Again, there's certain frames of thinking that need to be put away when you become a man. So when you're 70 years old and you're still acting like you're 19 or 20 in certain aspects,
baby girl, you about it.
Yeah, cut that out. Yeah, that's not what we doing no more. When the kids start having to hide their face when grandpa come around because he doing all the new dances with their friends and stuff. It's not cool. But it's interesting because I think it plays out a couple of different ways. I think it can inhibit your ability to be a good man to a good woman. For one, you know what I mean? Because of whatever traumas or whatever you dealt with, you start acting out through different behaviors, whether it's like you had mentioned earlier, you try to sex things away, you know what I mean? So I'm just going to go out here. I'm the man because I got all these women. That's a result of trauma. That's where that came from. You know what I mean? Some kind of trauma had you feeling like, well, if I can get a bunch of women, that makes me a man. You know what I'm saying? No. Some people will try to drink it away. Some people will try to smoke it away. Some people will pop a pill away, pill it away. Whatever you choose to do, whatever way you choose to act out, it's gonna affect your life, moving forward. And it doesn't expire until you deal with it. If you don't deal with it, it will not expire. So it's not like, well, I'm 30 now, that just washed off me. No, you need to talk it through. You need to seek counseling. You need to do whatever you need to do to actually process that, whatever it is that's in you from your childhood, and deal with it so that you can move past it. That's part of being a man as well. You know what I mean? Acknowledging that I'm not perfect. I have this issue and I have to deal with it. But all too often a lot of times though, the childhood trauma is usually so deep and so ingrained. We've lied to ourselves for so long about it since a child that we don't even acknowledge that it's there. Look, I know somebody, right? Has quite a few children with quite a few different women, right? I'm not knocking anybody that's in that situation. Live your life. Godspeed to you and all your children. But
don't use my name.
Not you. Not you.
Don't be out me out here like that.
But the thing is, if you don't start to see something might be wrong with this picture, I mean, that's a red flag. You know what I mean? Anybody that looks at a situation where there's a man with several different women, and it's no disrespect, it's just that you have to know, okay, there's something going on. There's something going on. If you are in and out of jail, time and time, that's a flag. There's something going on. Everybody's not just inherently bad people. They just have not dealt with the trauma from in their life. You don't know how somebody grew up. You don't know what they went through growing up. So, I think that's a big piece of a big obstacle when it comes to really fully realizing your manhood.
And, I love where you went with it. Me, man, I pull out the wire on GP randomly throughout the year.
Right.
And so I just went through the wire again recently. And it always struck me when I watched it before, but in season 4, I think it is when they've got season 3 or 4 where they got the kids.
Mm-hmm. Season 4.
And season 4. Mm-hmm. And so Nay is at that crossroad. Mm-hmm. Mom's is like, look, you got to step up. Mm-hmm. Brianna's cut us off. And she basically slaps him and tells him, "You're going to get out here and work this package."
Mm-hmm.
I think he had just gotten his package robbed. Everything was going bad for him.
Mm-hmm.
What I loved is that a bold and authentic man goes to his father,
Mm-hmm.
who's in prison.
Yep.
And said, "Look, you in here. And if your son was cut from the cloth that you are, maybe I wouldn't be here.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm here because he's not."
Mm-hmm.
And we caught him early enough that we see his potential. He's starting to expose some of it. And if given the opportunity, your son can have an amazing life, which is what you really wanted for him.
Mm-hmm.
He spoke to the man in him who cared about his legacy.
Absolutely.
And got what he needed from his father, which was the permission for the mother to say, "Let go. Let him go live with that man and that family."
Yep.
And I love where Nay ends up. So one of the reasons I think it's important to acknowledge the trauma is that, one, as men, as we move along and we get in the position to do so, we need to recognize where it's happening in the generation behind us. And we need to be deliberate and intentional about investing in that. Because part of what we gain in life with freedom and resources is the opportunity to help those who don't have access. But the other part is to make sure that we're addressing our own.
Right.
Most of us came up at the time. Now it's not like that. If you're a male child, you're probably told to cry when you don't even want to. You fall. Oh, it's okay to cry.
Right.
You won't even think about crying. I don't want to cry. You can cry if you want to.
Right.
But that's not what most of us grew up with, right?
Right.
Don't cry. Brush that off. You all right? And so you've been built with the mindset to overlook pain, overlook injury, overlook the things you can't understand. That's your DNA,
mm-hmm.
And your MO. And now you're being told, if you're going to be effective, you need to know, you need to identify those things. So, it's not popular to say. It's not something people are eager to have you talk about. But yeah, if the woman you really wanted to get with broke your heart, if you're homosexual, if the man you really wanted to get with broke your heart, misused you, whatever, and you created this fracture in the way you now relate to the opposite sex or the person of your interest, and now you're wounding people because you're still not over your own stuff, or you're not investing all of what you need to create a healthy, productive relationship, where you're creating damage,
mm-hmm.
right? And then there are a myriad of other injuries. So I definitely think that you're onto something, and that we have to understand the importance of trauma as we navigate through this. Big Dame, and again, this conversation is about setting the groundwork.
Mm-hmm.
As we go forward, and we really unpack this bit by bit. And again, I'll say to anyone, if this is the first time you're tuning in to Daptime, be sure to hit the subscription and the notification bell, because as we drop stuff, you're going to want to be up to date with it. Weigh in with your comments. In the next series, the next episode or installment of this series, we're going to talk about the importance of building the right foundation. And we see this as setting up these pillars that you can build around. What would you like most of all for men to know as we kind of close out this conversation as something to key on between now and the next conversation when we start laying out the principles?
Well, I think one of the things to remember is, and we'll get into the principles starting with the next episode, but one of the things that's interesting to me, you talked about laying down the proper foundation, but many of us are already grown. You know what I mean? The damage is done. We're in our 20s, 30s, 40s, and we're just figuring out, wait a minute, I was never given the proper foundation. Everything I was taught was kind of wrong. You know what I mean? And probably the people that taught me thought they didn't know they were wrong. You know what I mean? So I think it's important to always just to know that it's not too late to start. You know what I mean? To kind of start making those changes and allow yourself the ability to be flexible. There's nothing wrong with that. We're all a work in progress until we're gone. You know what I mean? So
right.
So nothing wrong with making changes, but most importantly, be open to the changes. You know what I mean? So that's I think the biggest thing, and that's because it's not about, the conversation is not about pointing out you're a man, this is a man, and this is not a man. It's not about pointing out. It's not about that. It's about highlighting what it is, and hopefully through conversation we can provide, you know, some steps and some ways for people that need to make some changes to make those changes, and for people that have it together to just affirm that you already got it. You know what I mean? And encourage you in your walk. You know what I mean? And so I think that's important too, because a lot of times, you know, if a man is too much man, a lot of times that's looked down upon that these days. You know what I mean? What you just going to come in here and you're going to run a show? But if you don't do nothing, you know, you're no good bum. You know what I mean? So it's like, which one do you want? But yeah, so I think it's important to, you know, for the people that, and hopefully those people comment, you know what I mean? If you got it together, comment, because we don't have all the answers, but I think through conversation, the more that are people that are involved, you know, the more ideas we can throw around. I think it can help everybody as a whole. You know, we're better together than apart. So
definitely, and I know there'll be no greater feeling than if you show up pumping your gas, filling up the cars for the week, and you step out of your car and you look across and a person you don't know is rocking a BAM t-shirt. You know, that's somebody who's standing on the same principles you are.
Absolutely.
And I think the more we see of that, the more we recognize, you know, that there are more of us out here than they're not.
Right.
But we need to be as visible. You know, listen, when you see a car and a bumper sticker and you see a rainbow on that flat rainbow bumper sticker, you like, I know what they stand for. Right. And not knocking it, nothing like that. But what that tells us, just like if you see a bumper sticker, hey, proud parent of, you know, a middle schooler at, you know, such and such high school or such and such, you know, middle school. You know what they stand for. You know what they're proud of. So, you know, the reason we're doing the BAM gear is because we need to have a way to recognize ourselves, to know there are others of us out here, so you can build that confidence. And with that, and in that vein, I would say the most important thing to me, in addition to what Big Dame just laid out, is don't do this alone. You know, don't just listen to us and go into, you know, your own secret place and whatever, but look around you and in your circle and see if there's another man in your community, in your neighborhood, in your network of friends who shares their values in this way that you can share your journey with, because it's going to be important. I mean, as you uncover those wounds, those injuries from childhood, early adulthood, late adulthood, wherever they happen, you know, somebody that can help you get perspective, because the worst thing we can do sometimes is make decisions or come to conclusions and judgments in the silo of ourselves. You know, we can be our worst critics. We can beat ourselves up, and you need somebody that, hey, once you've done the work of unpeeling that stuff, uncovering it, who's going to help walk you through it so you can get to the other side. With that, Big Dame, I think it's a great time for some DAP DNA. I know you got a nugget of wisdom for us, so I'll spin it up your way. Man,
in honor of the Manhood series, I think we're going to go to Pop's Corner. So, you know, welcome everybody to Pop's Corner. Here's where we show our respect for fathers and fatherly insight by sharing some of the wisdom that we received along the way. This is just our way of honoring a father's wisdom, where life and lessons go hand in hand. So today, we're gonna do it a little different. Normally, this is where I would come up with something that Pops told me, you know, in a conversation back in one of those one-liners that he might throw at you. But I think for during this time, I'm just gonna go with some different quotes regarding manhood. So, and this one right here is perfect for where we went in today's conversation. It kind of reaffirms where we're at. But the quote is, manhood is the defeat of childhood narcissism. Manhood is the defeat of childhood narcissism. We all know what narcissism is, right? And it's really a childlike mentality. It really is. I mean, I don't think anybody can dispute that. Manhood is simply defeating that. The scripture that you used to start off was when I became a man, I put away childish things. It didn't say I put away childish things and then I became a man. Once you become a man, everything else will follow. Everything will fall in line as it should. So, it's not a situation where you can say, okay, well, I'm not going to drink anymore. I'm not going to run around with different women anymore. It's something it's mental. It's inside. It's psychological. It's a mindset change. You know what I mean? So it's not something that you can tangibly pick up or put down. It is literally comes from within. So, just keep that in mind. So, I think one of the things we always need to do is make sure that we focus on our energy in the right place. So, I wouldn't want anybody to be out here focusing on tangible things because that's not where it's at. It is simply a mindset change. So, if you're still dealing with a little narcissism, it's okay. You don't have to tell anybody. Just know it's childlike. It's okay. We all have our moments. We still have them, but know what it is. Deal with it. Treat it as such, and then you can see the rewards. You know what I'm saying? So that's it, man. Manhood is the defeat of childhood narcissism, my brother.
I love it, man. I love that. And in honor of that may be the quote on the first BAM t-shirt. Man, that may go on there. But man, it's funny. I got this image of a man coming home after, he goes to work. He was expecting his promotion. Mm-hmm. Goes in, boss like, hey, Johnny, you did a good year, but we're not going to give you the promotion. We're going to wait till next quarter. It's a bad day, right? He comes back out, disappointed, opens up his computer, looks at his email. The deal he thought was going to go through doesn't go through. It just turns into a miserable day, and he gets home. What's wrong, honey? It's a bad day. Didn't get the promotion. Big deal didn't come through. Car problems on the way home. Like, everything going wrong. And she gives him a popsicle and let me go in the living room, turn on some Hanna-Barbera. I'm gonna get your popsicle. You'll be all right, baby.
Yeah.
And he's like, thank you, honey. Thank you, honey.
Yeah. You're not there yet if you're that guy. And that's okay.
Right.
Keep pushing on, brother.
Yeah, keep tuning in. It'll get there.
Yeah.
As always, Big Dame, thank you, man, for the conversation, the generosity of spirit that you brought to it. Pete Nice, thank you for always scratching on the break and definitely dropping it on the one. But brothers, for you guys tuning in, and listen, maybe you are a wife or a girlfriend or a significant other who is tuning in on behalf of your significant other. Thank you for listening, tuning in. I'll say it again, be sure to subscribe, hit the notification bell, but also hit the share button. Send this out to people that you think will benefit from the conversation and who you would love to be on this journey with you, 5, 10, 15, 20 of them. If you aren't doing so already, get on over to our website and put in your email, www.itsdaptime.com, so that you can follow us, you can hear about things we're doing. We have a surprise for you at the end of this series. We're going to do something really, really special to connect the men who are connecting for this series in particular. You can catch us on social media as well. We're doing really fun things throughout this series to reinforce the value of bold, authentic manhood. Baby Bam Beat. We're on Twitter at @Dap_time, on Instagram at Daptime21, and we are on Facebook at Daptime. But whatever you do and however you do it, make sure you're sharing it with us to build a community of like-minded individuals. We'll leave you now, as we always do. When you wake up in the morning and you look in the mirror, there is your competition. Yeah.
Peace.